And that's when the drama will really start in Nigeria because once you do that, you basically made okay, this everybody now starts looking at you. You're going to do for any state in the southwest when they have a breakdown of law and order. And which of the states are you going to do it for?
Questions, and more questions. Never any answers. Coming to you live from our studios here in Victoria Island. This is Smooth 98.1 Love Music, Love Life. 31 minutes past 7 a.m. on a terrific Tuesday morning. The Smooth Breakfast is in full flow, and yours truly here with you, Ayokunmi Kekere. We're ready to walk into the world of the papers, the big stories, the headlines, and the talking points from the dailies across the nation. Freshly Pressed is live with you on a Tuesday. Thank you for always keeping it tuned and making it a date with us. We appreciate you taking out the time. We never ever take it for granted. And it's going to be another amazing morning, an interactive session as it always is. So it's very simple. All you need to do is keep it locked. We'll take the stories, we'll get analysis, and we'll take your contributions and your thoughts as well. And you can send those thoughts into us on WhatsApp on the number 0809 444 0981 0809 4440981 is the WhatsApp number. You can also join the live stream on YouTube. You can find us at Smooth 981 FM Lagos, Smooth 981 FM Lagos. All right, it's a Tuesday, and you know that I have the main man with me in the studio this morning to analyze the stories. Chibuzor, good morning to you. What's going on?
Good morning, Aya. Good morning, Lagos. It's a cool Thursday, Tuesday morning. So let's hope the stories will follow suit.
Well, that I don't know if I can guarantee fully, bearing in mind what's been going on in the country in the last couple of days or thereabouts. And we shall begin on that trajectory. Still talking about Benue State. Yes, Benue is still in the eye of the storm, as it were. And we're taking the story from the Punch and updates concerning the situation over there. And it has to do with President Bola Tinubu, who has rescheduled his official visit to Kaduna State. Instead, he'll travel to Benue State on Wednesday, that's tomorrow, as part of renewed efforts to foster peace and address the persistent conflict affecting communities in the state. This was revealed in a statement by his special advisor on information and strategy, that's Bayo Ononuga. According to him, the president was scheduled to visit Kaduna on Wednesday to commission various state government projects, but that'll be pushed to Thursday so the president can visit Benue on Wednesday and just take a look at what's been going on in that regard. Now, some people have said, why couldn't he up and leave, to the states immediately or as early as Monday and so on and so forth? But I guess there are all sorts of various reasons for that. But the president is visiting, it's going to be there live and direct. What impact do you think this is going to have on what's going on in Benue at the moment?
So I'll start. What impact will it have? Okay. I think, and I'm going to typically like to play both sides of this of the table when it comes to this. I think it's a good idea that the president would go down to Benue and see things firsthand, or at least hear accounts of things firsthand. I do hope he doesn't go there and seek or his aides don't help him get a sanitized version of things. Because we typically see a lot of political operatives falling over themselves to ensure that their principals are comfortable in engagement instead of ensuring that they get access to the true state of facts on ground, or at least not facts but perspectives, because what you would see in places like in this kind of issues or occurrences is perspectives from various sides of the table.
Okay.
So what we do expect is that the president will take on board the various perspectives and look at and try and get to some point where we're able to get a workable solution towards solving these things. Now, when people think about Benue State, and one, if you, I think it was yesterday, there was a lot of stories about our official inflation rates dropping, and one of the reasons were due to the reduce pressure on food inflation. And I was listening and I was smiling because I, while that is what it is, there are other things that have come out of, the other piece of information that I had heard that I was trying to align that information to it. But where my point when I raised this fact is that the same way that we've had an instance in River State,
Cross State.
sorry, where we've had where the president has had to step in quote and declare a state of emergency because of the economic importance of River State. The truth, from a factual perspective, that Benue is as important as Rivers because it's by no means, it's not by chance that Benue is called the food basket of the nation.
Hmm.
So that's how important it is. If there's a continued impact on food supply or food production in Benue State, you will definitely have a ripple effect across the country. I'm not saying that the president should go and declare a state of emergency. That's not my point. I'm just saying that this issue has to be treated with some level of importance, and I do hope and I do think that the president is giving some level of importance to it. Um, I think last week there was a lot of talk. Well, earlier in the week there was a lot of talk about the previous statements of the president, and that's why I'm being very careful about the purpose of his visit and the fact that he doesn't get his sanitized due. The issues within the state are not as basic as farmer whatever
Farmer header
farmer header
clashes.
clashes, and if they were, let's even assume they were, the basic principle is that for me and for a lot of people who sit down on the sides, both the farmers and headers are involved in what they are both involved in economic activities, right?
Right.
On one point, you have a farmer who is spending his money, sowing his seeds, putting time, sweat, labor, hope, emotion into raising crops over a period of time, which is over a season, and hoping that he's going to be able to harvest that to be able to pick up, pay his bills, take care of his family. And on the other side, there are these headers with, apart from owning this cattle and maybe paying for people who own it, because I'm using that the headers who are paid by individuals, because these headers do not own this cattle. Let's not get it missing. Let us get it mixed up in most instances, because those cattle that we roam around are not cheap. These guys don't own this cattle, but they are paying minimal economic. There's a minimal economic contribution from them in this their economic activity, apart from what they would gain by either selling this cattle or whatever they pay in the markets when they go to sell them, when they eventually do sell them. So there's no investment into their business because they're basically eating off the land. So when you say, oh, you need to reconcile, I basically am sitting down somewhere and somebody brings in something and destroys the work I have put in for a season,
Very hard
the
work, I need to
investment
add.
I've put in for a season, my family's so what is going to provide for my family, provide for my community, provide for everybody else. And I really have no recourse into resolving this issue. And apart from accepting that it's what will happen normally, I think we need to look long term as a country into how we deal with the issue of cattle herding. I think the closest we've come to a solution was the ranching option. But obviously, unfortunately, we allowed politics, we allowed mistrust to come into that. I will also allow this same issue because it appears that the owners of cattle do not want to invest into this economic activity that they're involved in.
That is
There's
unacceptable.
there's an expectation that these ranches will, whatever solution comes will come with them at little or no cost.
Even though it's their own personal
It, you
business.
and it's a private business at the end of the day. So we need to be able to come to that. That is one level of what the problems. What they might maybe the president's visit might also uncover other underlying issues that will come out from the lips of the people who are directly impacted. And let's truth be told, I have before this before we came on here, I was discussing with I've had you know I do have a personal stake in this game because a part of my family does live in Benue State, and I have seen firsthand the impact of some of these issues, both in terms of increased, both in kind of displacement of people, in terms of the economic impact it's had on citizens who are not directly impacted by the issues, but have had to take care of the displaced people. In fact, I remember one of the things was when I got married in Makodi, and I remember like a good chunk of the food that was prepared for our reception went to the, what do you call it? Went to the IDP camp.
Camps. Mm.
And but that's what it is. That's, there's, it's not just about the people who are directly impacted. There are a lot of people who are indirectly impacted, and also on the state. The states need to move forward, and these are one of the things that will hold it back. And it also speaks like to also the larger problem of insecurity in Nigeria. So I do hope something good comes out of this visit. And I don't think it will be gotten by declarations or proclamations. I think it will actually be gotten by getting down to the bottom of the issues and doing the groundwork that needs to solve these problems. And some of this groundwork are both political, some are economic, and needs to be sorted out as quickly as possible.
Mm. Most definitely. We as a country, we love to treat symptoms, never the root cause of the issues. Why? It's beyond me. But you talked about the fallout of these incidents and the humanitarian side of things, because this story, this is just adding on to this story, because we're also talking about Benue in totality. This is from the Premium Times. And NEMA, that's the National Emergency Management Agency, have said that a total of about 6,527 people have been displaced in the aftermath of the recent violence in Benue State. Now, they noted that more than 3,000 displaced persons, including children and women, were in urgent need of humanitarian assistance, such as food, non-food items, potable water, essential medical supplies as well. I mean, these are numbers that are staggering, and you actually mentioned, when you had your wedding and all that years ago, and they were it's part of the food at the wedding was given to those who are in IDP camps. Now, these years later, we're still having these conversations. We're still having more people being displaced and being pushed into these camps and so on and so forth. If this tide isn't stemmed, what are we going to see in terms of the humanitarian, in quotes, disaster that we're probably looking at?
So there are various things that we'll see. You know, I'll go back to when we were talking earlier. About 10, 11 years ago, when I first time I went to Makodi, or time I went to Benue State, and I think between my two first visits, I noticed the change and the population growth that happened in Makodi as a town, where you had, when I first went, there were no IDP camps, no visible IDP camps, and by the second time I had gone, that was after the effects of Boko Haram happening in surrounding states and surrounding towns. You had these IDP camps springing up, or people basically relocating and taking up spaces where they could,
Hmm.
to basically protect themselves against the impact of what was happening. And with that, you also saw that issues coming up: increased rents, cost increased across board because there was more demand for some of those things, housing, for food. There was all that people had been displaced from farms, so they could produce less. Cost of food had slightly gone up. And now you have another wave, but a lot of these waves are coming from internally. So you're going to see the same thing. People are going to move from these places where they are high at risk and move into places that they feel are safer, typically within the Makodi metropolis and IDP camps, where a lot of them were relocated to. Now, what does it bring? It brings a lot, apart from the economic impact, there's also the social impact. Obviously, where if you have increased rates of crime, which you might have because some of these people will come in and they are desperate and they need to provide for themselves,
Right.
you would have some of these issues. Even when they are not directly involved, there's going to be a distrust between the native population that are there, and some of them are coming in thinking that everything bad that happens after they come into the town will be pointed towards them. That
Mm.
this so
Mm.
there are those social issues that will happen. You have the reduced number of people who are able to go to the farms. I think last over the weekend I was talking to some. Typically I get a lot of my food supply from Benue State, and I was talking to my mother-in-law who helps me bring in some of the food, and she spoke about how some of the prices of the food had gone up. And we had actually noticed, because I've been doing this for a while, and we had noticed that progression over the last
Steady increase in the
yeah, that
prices.
steady increase in the last 1 year, how the prices had increased. And she had said basically farmers were afraid to go to their farms, because of a lot of the conflict that was happening, and because of that there was less food supply, which meant obviously increases in prices. So you are seeing that on that aspect. But at the end of the day, what should concern a lot of us the most is the impact on lives. We are looking at children, we are looking at mothers with children, we are looking at even men. People are losing their lives unnecessarily. Our natural resource, one of the things that we always claim whenever we talk to foreign investors that we have is that we have a large market. Although that's another question for another day, because having a population and having a large market are two different things. But we are not paying attention to people. Our people are dying needlessly.
Mm,
We are displacing individuals. We are displacing households. We are stressing our we are stressing the infrastructure, social infrastructure that we don't have at this time, or which is limited at this time, and we need to do something to stop that stretching. Because guess what? Some of these children that we provide to, that are going to be affected by these things today, if you do not take care of them properly and give them a semblance of some normal life or an opportunity to live a normal life, we will pay the price in some years to come.
mm. As we've paid or been paying the price recently, looking at what's been going on in some parts of Nigeria, northern parts of Nigeria, those children that haven't been taken care of, haven't been given any oversight, and we definitely don't want to have a reoccurrence of this. So these are the main issues. These are the things that we really need to think about as a nation, as a people. What exactly is it that we want to do? What do we want to achieve? And what kind of country do we want to live in the next couple of years? These are the questions. Let me take a message or two before we talk about Labour. Labour are in the news once again, our very good friends from Labour. Let me see here. This is Tony Marine Beach says, open grazing is the reason or the platform on which these killings thrive. President Tinubu should immediately commence the ranching system and ban open grazing to end this menace. No one should be allowed to wield the AK-47 anymore because no individual or group is above the law. I have to summarize that message there, Tony, so I can take a couple of other ones. Mekain Ikeja says the president's visit to Benue State will never yield anything new. This is a knee-jerk approach because the Kaduna visit is his primary concern. And there's one here that I saw, a comment here I saw on YouTube. It's another Emeka. He says, I'm currently in Otogbo in Benue State. This town has also received its own share of attacks. Even though it's currently peaceful now, there's palpable tension. We don't sleep with our eyes closed.
That's from Ojukwu, which is the home of I think that's David Maxwell, the former Speaker of the House, retired General and
Mm,
former Speaker of the House of Assembly. No, sorry, it was former Senate President.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back into the stories. Keep those thoughts coming in on WhatsApp on 0809 All right, let's step into the Vanguard real quick here. And let me just take an excerpt of this story. Now, with over 130% improvement over the last minimum wage of 30,000 naira, the organized labor said despite biting inflation and weak purchasing power of the populace, the 70,000 naira new wage floor is an achievement it is proud of. Now, President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, that's Joe Ajero, and his trade union Congress counterpart, Festus Osifo, at a joint press briefing on the sideline of the just concluded International Labour Conference in Geneva, argued that achieving a 3-year renegotiation circle for the first time in history is equally satisfactory. Actually, this is where numbers can be very deceptive. Talking about, over 130% improvement over the last minimum wage. Yes, that looks fine on paper, but the reality, it doesn't even make much of a difference. They even cited biting inflation and weak purchasing power, but they said, hey, the new wage floor is something that they are proud of.
Okay. You know, like I said, at times I like to sit on both sides of the fence and look at what they are talking about. So yes, like you said, numbers can be deceptive depending on how you present it, right? So he's presented it and said, 130% increase. If I got a 130% increase on my salaries, you know, it would look good.
Mm.
It would look good on any piece of. I work in a place where I get a 130% increase on my wages. It will look good to anybody. But he's also made a point, which is also very true, and it's something I also agree with. That when you look at 70,000, that yeah, it looks good on paper, and also it's the base. It's the base. It's basically the bottom or the floor, which let's say that the minimum wage, which is the least you could get, is 70,000, right? It's a good start, but now you look at the two things he's pointed out: weak purchasing power of the populace and the rising inflation. Now, typically, one of the issues I had with the entire negotiation within Labour and government was I kept on wondering what was the basis. I kept on hearing government bringing their templates and all that to the party, And I do recall that Labour started its own negotiations from about 450,000.
There
That
are
was,
different. I think it was. I think it was 600, 400,
they kept
200.
up, they went down, and it
Thereabouts.
almost looked as if they had gone to night market to buy fish. By the time they got down to 70,000, so I was trying to understand what was the driver between their, for their initial numbers, and how they could get down to 70, which was obviously which is the same question that a lot of their members will be asking. How did we start at 450 or 600 or whatever and end up at 70?
70.
So if you look at those numbers, also it will tell you a different story. So that's how do you pick up your numbers. But also, if you look at, they've made, the 2 points they've made: purchasing power and inflation. When we look at the inflation numbers, how are we determining our inflation numbers today? There's typical pause by most Nigerians when they say that, hey, you know according to the government or the MBS, our inflation numbers are dropping, but yet we are feeling a tighter bite in our pocket, so it might not be a true reflection of where we are really. And there could be counter arguments about things steadying up and things stabilizing over a period of time and whatever. But at the end of the day, what Nigerians are looking for is that I should be able to earn something that allows me to live a productive life, to start with, at least provide for my basic needs. And it now says, what will be the role of labor in achieving some of these things? Because when we look at inflation, there are a lot of factors that trigger some of these things. A lot of it is corruption. What role is labor playing in ensuring that people are accountable for government expenses, things are priced properly? Because the truth is that a lot of this, when lab, the majority of the people within the labor unions work in the government enterprises,
Right.
right? When we look at some of the contracts that are being declared for some of the works, which is what basically reduces the amount of money Nigeria has to do other things. And there's typical question about how things are being manipulated, and there's always talk about that government cannot do anything without civil servants. Then it also comes into question what members of Labour are also doing to help solve this problem. What is Labour's position in terms of how are things running generally in Nigeria? Because inflation doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from somewhere. It comes from how we're spending, how we're living. And even the labor union leaders need to look at themselves. A lot of people in the private sector look at the labor. A lot of junior staff in the private sector are basically forced to become members of labor unions, because if you don't, labor comes and pickets those organizations. But when they look at in terms of return, what return are they getting apart from the dues that they pay? So I think they should stop their self-adulation, and they should stop this chest beating, and they should go and task the government and be part of how do we improve things so that our members and by effect the general citizenry will be able to take these wages back home to do something better with it. They talked about the 3-year cycle. We're almost at that 3-year point where they have to renegotiate those wages, because I think it was done last year. So this is year 2. I think year 3 is next year. So I'll be waiting to see, if they're able to keep up with their 3-year window and what they're going to come out of it. But at the end of the day, even if you put the wages at 80,000, 85,000, you know, things have gone out of place. Most of when a lot of us started working, we were able to earn some money to be able to get maybe a room somewhere, get some accommodation somewhere. Some of us dreamt of buying cars, and we were able to put money to buy cars.
That's a pipe dream for a lot of people right now.
Your average, even the guys who are working now, talking about your average startup, your average starter, your average graduate who's starting up, cars, getting those things are a dream, and we shouldn't be in that position in this country today. So Labour, you've had a lot more work to do. So enjoy your holidays in Zurich or Geneva. I think it was Geneva. Enjoy the holidays in Geneva, and come back and do actual work, instead of focusing on elections like the average politician.
You know what? This particular situation, it's similar to what I mentioned earlier about us always treating the symptoms, never the root cause. I mean, like you said, the minimum wage could be increased to 180,000 or whatever, but once the system in place is going to be eating and biting into that, it makes a mockery of the monies at the
Whatever
end
you
of the
put
day.
it will be consumed. So inflation will catch up with it at this rate.
Let me do a couple of messages and we'll talk about Air Peace and the FCCPC. Yes, there's some updates concerning that as well that we need to bring to the fore. This is Adigboyiga Adigiji says the Benue killings are amongst many avoidable killings across the country and region remain a mystery unsolved. The same way cases of assassinations and deaths of prominent Nigerians over the years have become rocket science because of insincerity and lack of political will of the political elites to bring those involved to book. This is from Michael Akimemi says, serious, serious bullava happening in Benue. Commissioning takes priority over lives in this Niger. But that has been pushed forward now. The president has pushed that forward. He's going to Benue. Let's calm down, Michael. He says, why have there been no arrest of herders or even farmers? Just saying, breaking the law so far. Nobody has faced the law. He's just going to get more defections to PDP, or do you mean to APC? My thoughts. Anyways, that's no, sorry, his thoughts, not my thoughts personally, Michael's thoughts, just to clear that one up. All right, let's jump into the punch. And like I mentioned, the FCCPC, that's the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, have summoned the management of Air Peace Limited following multiple complaints from passengers regarding non-refunded ticket fares, even in cases where the airline cancelled scheduled flights. Now, in a formal notice dated June 3rd, 2025, the Commission ordered Air Peace to appear at its Abuja headquarters on Monday, June 23rd, 2025, to address growing public outcry and allegations of consumer rights violations. Isn't this something that is way, 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 way overdue? And this is not just about Air Peace, it's about virtually all the local airlines that are plying their trade in Nigeria, because anyone who has had to fly within Nigeria would have faced one issue or another.
So I know a lot of people jumping on their feet and hitting their chest and just shouting and screaming, hoping that Airpiece gets hit by this. But you also pointed out, you raised a very clear point. It's not just about Airpiece. It's largely about almost all, if not all, operators within the Nigerian aviation industry, right? And it's while you can see the FCCPC trying to do something about this, it's a bit. The question I would ask is that I do expect that there's some that within the industry there should be some regulator, or I do know there are some regulators who should actually be taking a front seat into this. Now, when you look at something that is industry wide, you might, a lot of people might think, well, this is just bad behavior by APs. They don't respect us. They don't care. They don't take us seriously. But for me, I believe there are other systemic issues that are resulting in a lot of this. If you ever try to take a flight by APs or largely, and I would speak on my personal experience, if your flight is not the first flight in the morning, um, you are not guaranteed of leaving at the time when you're supposed to leave, and that's a given. They've moved off from just giving announcements and whatever, but now they give you biscuits, and they give you, I think, some drink when you're delayed.
That's an improvement.
And that's an improvement. They've moved to that point over the years. But I think while there are reasons for delays, some of the delays might be outside of their control, but we need to get to the point where there is a clear understanding of the whys, and we're able to push out whatever is not any delay that is not within reason. And when I say within reason, that cannot be prevented.
Weather,
weather, stuff like that, safety related issues. We need to see also a bigger play by the regulators within the industry, not just about collecting fees. Because I always tell people, go and look at your ticket, you see the amount of money that actually goes to the airline, and the chunk of it goes to associated groups within the regulators within the industry, FAN, SCA, blah blah blah. We need to see them come to the party in terms of also providing quality services. Now, I do hope that the SCCPC action would not just be about slamming Airpeace at the end of the day with whatever fines, but also would trigger a change in behavior, not just by Airpeace, like we said, but by every other player in the industry. We need to have clear-cut guidelines. Customers or consumers of this product, because the product at the end of the day need to understand where are our rights. I've had an instance where my flights were I reportedly came in late for a flight for reportedly because it was quite funny, and the counter was closed. Nobody was attending to me. In fact, the gentleman or the who was in charge of it was basically raising his shoulder and jumping up and down, shouting at the top of his voice that he has closed the counter and nothing I can do about it. I put in a complaint to Airpeace, got no responses, and that's the kind of experience not just me but a lot of people have gone through. There is no care towards providing the customers with quality service, but there's more care to making that money. Because what you find out in a lot of instances, like one that was had one of our comrade senators over the weekend, where a lot of these flights are overbooked, and basically when you don't shop when they are trying to finish up their stuff, they basically sell out your tickets, and even if you shop before they close the counter, they will insist that you know what, you can't fly with them because the counter is closed, because basically they know at that point that your seat has been sold,
Yeah.
and they don't want you to make a fuss about it. So we need to get to this point. I do hope that this will probably trigger some discussion, a larger discussion within the industry in terms of where the airlines also are seen as the reasons why some of their flights are delayed, if they can be resolved and if they're outside their control. And every player within this space will understand what their role is clearly, to make sure that the customer gets the effective and efficient service that he has paid for.
Yes, indeed. That culture of not caring and that culture of, no, excuse me, of no consequences to action, it definitely needs to change if we are to advance as a nation. All right, let me round up with messages here. Michael says, I worked in the aviation industry for over 14 years. The level of corruption there has not been made public. I can't tell you categorically that nothing will come out of this. I mean, you can or you can't, Michael. I'm not sure exactly where you stand, but I'll take it as you can't. So let us see. But that is telling. That is telling. Oh, he says, I can tell you categorically that nothing will come out of the summons, which is like a regular thing in Nigeria. Something happens, people are summoned, sessions are had, and then everybody goes back to regular programming at the end of the day.
It's a form of entertainment in Nigeria.
With everything we're
They
going
entertain
through.
us by this, those sessions.
Goodness gracious. Dakbo says, this is very pathetic. They need to get those men apprehended. Security agencies must get these wicked men and bring them to justice. We really hope that that's going to happen. Barrister Danukuda in Igodo says, is it really possible for a worker with a family of four to survive on minimum wage of 70,000 naira today in Nigeria? Government needs to do better. All right, thank you for your thoughts. Joseph Menier in Silver Estate in Ejigo says 200 or more lives just gone like that, burnt and killed like ordinary old clothes without the governor, Senate president, or president blinking. Imagine the deafening silence and inactions. Yet common power tussle in River state of emergency is quickly imposed without consultation. Yet lives are lost. The president says the governor should go and settle with the terrorists. How now? Phoebe Inekwe says, my heart still goes out to those who were brutally killed in Benue and the North. We need to continue to speak out until the government acts effectively to stem this. We should show that we care about life. There must be a stop to these murders, and the killers must be brought to book. The farmers have a right to their land and their livelihood. Agreed, agreed, agreed. This is Dapo from Cavendish Place. Says, bloodbath in Benue really is terribly pathetic. The last episode of the massacre there 7 to 8 years ago made me go on a beef hunger strike for 6 to 7 months, eating only fish and chicken because patronizing our herdsmen enemies is against the law. Genocide happening in Gaza is no better. And Ajayi Olonlua in Magodo Jerry Sherry says, it's a good idea for the president to visit Benue State to see things for himself, but the solution to the crisis, including the terrorism and banditry ravaging the whole country, is to sit down in the Situation Room at Aso Rock with his security chiefs and remain there for as long as it takes to find a solution to the problems. That's how it's done in other countries. Hey, we don't always emulate how certain things are done in other countries. We take some and leave some. We're very picky like that. Anyways, we need to call it a morning on the show, Freshly Pressed. It's been an interesting and insightful one. Thank you so much, Chibuzor, for coming through.
Thank you so much, Ayo. Thank you very so much, Lagos. Have a lovely day.
Righty, and Lagos, Nigeria, the entire world, wherever it is that you are listening to us, thank you for keeping it tuned and sending your messages. We appreciate you each and every single day. But do not go anywhere. Do not change that dial because the smooth breakfast will kick on. And we're heading into the grapevine at 8:15 for entertainment and so much more.